You said, "It feels great to have support, and one day I'll share my story." Is this the day you care to share your story?
I'm sharing it now.
About the conflict with Nike?
The most interesting man in the world.
So when you think about your early years, who were some of the most influential people in your life?
Obviously, my mother, my grandmother, who has now passed away.
In what ways were they influential?
Being influences on my early education and just developing study habits and discipline.
What was their mindset on education?
The mindset was it was non-negotiable. Anything below an A was like unsatisfactory. But really it was just like you needed to be trying your best. And maybe if my best would have only been a B, they would have accepted that, but that wasn't my best, so they didn't accept anything less than A. I didn't get an A, I didn't get a B until like high school.
So you took to school pretty quickly then?
Yeah, they made me. They made us. I fought them a lot of times along the way, but my grandmother used to make me do school even during the summertime, which every student wishes to hear that, you know. So I had to do stuff, write book reports. I had to do all type of stuff in the summertime to try to retain and add on to like the school year, rather than in the summertime, most kids are just, you know, playing sports or playing video games or whatever.
Did that influence your decision on college, you know, going to a school like Berkeley, which is a good basketball school, but also a very good academic institution?
Absolutely. I've always looked at myself as well as an athlete, as an intellect, just because of my educational background, my penchant for learning, and the kind of the family that instilled that into me. So to find a university that I could like fulfill those two needs was paramount for me. So Berkeley was the choice that settled with me the best.
What'd you gain from that, the time you spent at Berkeley?
Oh, it was amazing. Berkeley, Oakland area is like a second home to me now. The area is full of thought leaders and people who desire to make the world a better place. So it was very fitting for me to spend my time there. A lot of people throughout history who've had influence over society and have had, who've gained large platforms to speak to the world have crossed through Berkeley at different times. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mario Savio, the list goes on. So it was pretty cool because that energy still exists there, where the people are very much like that. There's a lot of protests. There's a lot of people who share their mind. There's a lot of open spaces, even amongst inner dwellings where people just have conversations about the world's problems and how you can make them better.
When you say thought leaders there, who were some of the people that you interacted with during your time?
My peers. I'm not anybody that, in today's time would be recognized, my professors, DVR, Professor Mahiri, to name a few, Professor Fry, rest in peace to Professor Fry. My professors and my peers were the thought leaders to me, coming from a city of Georgia, Atlanta, and moving to Berkeley where intellect and education and how savvy your mind was the cool thing. So it just made you want to learn more and be more passionate about the things that you believed in.
Was there anything that one of those professors taught that stuck with you even today?
Yeah, all of it. A lot of it sticks with me today. A lot of the stuff that I learned in my 10 months at Berkeley, I still carry with me. I've given lectures on things that I've learned at Berkeley. I could name a lot of stuff. You might have to be more specific for me to narrow something down, but a lot of the different topics that I've discussed were topics that I got introduced to when I was at Berkeley: panopticism, dynamic normalization, social stratification, tracking, hegemony, things that people have heard me speak about who've listened to me give lectures at universities. are stuff that I was introduced to when I got to Berkeley.
When you go back to Berkeley to give those lectures, what is generally the theme of them? What are you speaking to on?
I've never given the same lecture twice, and I've lectured at 5 major universities now: MIT, Berkeley, Harvard, what's this school called in Atlanta? Morehouse, and Clark, are the universities, and looking to expand that plus 20, after 2025, post 2025.
And you were doing that here pretty early in your time, Boston. You were at Harvard, right? Early on, or MIT?
Harvard, youngest Harvard lecturer still to this day.
Did public speaking kind of come naturally to you as a younger person?
I wouldn't say that. I think it's a skill that you got to work on. Something I definitely worked at. I've had public speaking coaches that have been provided from universities. MIT was my first time working with like a public speaking coach, and I just worked on it and stuff like that, and have gotten more comfortable with it. Still got a lot of room for growth.
Was the Harvard speaking opportunity something you sought out, something they came to you about? How did that come about?
They came to me. Actually, they slid in my DM. It sounds kind of crazy. Yeah.
Like the school itself, or somebody from?
The school itself,
Okay.
like the Harvard branded, slid in my DM. That's how I got invited to come speak at Harvard. But it all started because I did like this crazy article when I was like my first year, maybe it was my second year in the league. And I'm talking to some guy, I'm thinking who's just like a regular Boston beat writer or whatnot. I had no idea, but he's asking me all these questions about college, kind of like how you are now. And I'm giving him all these answers about stuff that I learned and stuff like that. And turns out he's one of the head writers for The Guardian. And he titled the article, "Sports is a Mechanism for Control." And he put my face right on the cover. and that's how it started, because that became very controversial and viral, that this young player who just had his life changed and just walked into a certain amount of wealth because of sports, has now made this statement saying sports is a mechanism for control at 19 years old. Like, it made people kind of interested into what the
The most interesting man in the world. Look at this mother.
You're just gonna come in and just interrupt me.
Absolutely, the most interesting man in the world. What's up?
Man, I'm good.
Great to see you.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Appreciate
What's
you.
up, man?
I'll be waiting for you outside.
All right, yeah. Put some socks on.
It's always sunny.
Yes, sir.
The Guardian article, did you agree with it?
Did I agree with it? I was given a perspective. I wasn't agreeing with it. Is not like a fair question to ask.
Okay.
I do agree with it, but it's like I was just sharing a perspective that sports can be viewed as, and that's something I had learned, and that's something that I think people had. It's maybe something that people had lost sight of, and I was just elaborating it from my perspective as a 19-year-old at the time, to give context. Some people took it as like I'm dissing sports, like I'm talking bad about sports, and sports is this and sports is bad, but that's not what I meant at all. I was just coming from my perspective, knowing that sports have just helped me change my life, but also sports plays a role in keeping people distracted, from what's going on in the real world, and how it plays its role for spectators, for media, and in society to make you forget about some of the things that society has, is redefining.
Did you always have the mindset of, when I get to the pros, I'm going to do more than just play? Like, I'm going to do more with all this that comes with it than just be a basketball player?
Did I have the mindset?
Did you come in believing like, hey, I want to do things like, maybe not lecturing at Harvard, but like things along those lines? I want to do more than just focus everything entirely on basketball.
It's who I was. So it's not like I developed this mindset like I'm gonna do this. that's just who Jaylen is. The more you get to know my upbringing and how I was raised, and how I've always handled myself, even from like a high schooler, that was just me. So if anything, I promised myself I was just gonna be myself throughout this journey, rather than be an alternate version that made people feel better about themselves, or play a game that people tell you to, or be corporate. I'm just gonna be however it goes, good or bad, or indifferent. I'm gonna just be Jaylen.
So the question of who Jaylen is, besides family members, who would you say has had the most influence on you, especially in your younger formative years?
Who? It's probably been a combination of people, between historical figures, between, my beliefs.
Start with historical figures then. Who?
Historical figures, who's had the most influence. For the sake of this article, I'm not gonna name them. But
Controversial?
nah, just like most people, you could probably take this whole thing in a different direction.
Okay.
But some pretty cool people.
Beyond historical figures then, people that have had influence, who else would you put on that list?
From musicians to educators to activists to all of those type of things. Combination of different people have been I've studied from, learned from, and kind of helped shape my viewpoint on life.
From the activist perspective, who would be on that list?
Martin Luther King, Tupac, Toussaint.
It's a diverse list.
Yeah. When my professor, I mentioned before, Professor Fry, when I was at Berkeley, I took a class called Student Activism. Professor Fry, who's now passed away, he actually helped create like African American studies in universities. He taught a class at Berkeley called Student Activism, and in his class, we would look at different activists from different periods of time in different places in the world, and we would compare and contrast, like, would this movement work in today's time? With their theories, everything. And for our final project, we had to create our own movement, and with a group of our students. I can't remember what our movement was called, and you had to give like your reasoning, why it's different from everything else, why to work, you know what I mean, who's gonna fund it, all different type of stuff. So that was one of my favorite things. That was one of my favorite classes at Berkeley that I carry with me to this day, and I still carry a lot of the things I learned in the way that I approach things.
Do you remember anything about the movement? That's interesting.
Yeah, I would have to go back, because it wasn't completely my idea, because I had to work with other people, which is tough at times. But I think we came up with something pretty fun, pretty cool. We got a good grade on it, so that's what mattered the most.
So the easiest thing for any player to do when it comes to shoe wear, apparel, sign a deal with a big company, collect a check. Pretty simple. It's pretty tried and true over the years of the NBA. Why go out on your own?
I mean, why not? You look at kind of the state of footwear right now, like working in the vice presidency for the Players Association for the last 7 or 8 years. I listen to players and their strifes about some of the things they wish they could see better in the sneaker industry and the shoe companies, how there's a lack of value, there's a lack of understanding. And then recently, they've even been cutting deals like crazy. In the last couple of years, like the major brands have dialed back. For whatever reason, they've cut, guys' endorsements. They just offer product now. And obviously guys feel some type of way about that, but like, what can they do? So me, having resources and also thinking, and also my brain works to try to create solutions. I thought like, I could speak about these things or whatever till I'm like blue in the face, or I can just try to create the solutions that you want to see in the world. And maybe my brand won't be that, but maybe it sparks somebody else for theirs to be, and for them to start the journey. Because it's 2025, I think things can look different than they have in the past. And athletes being able to create some of their own brands and have ownership, we're already starting to see in other sports. If I'm not mistaken, Federer. I can't remember the name of his shoe brand. You see it every day, but it's other athletes are starting to do the same thing in other brands, and I think that's pretty cool to be able to take ownership, and then also for less athletes kind of banding together and using and monetizing our own influence rather than these other entities thinking that we're not smart enough to do it ourselves. So, to see other athletes take that step and those initiatives, because, being an athlete, being a professional is like a brotherhood and a sisterhood. It's like so being able to, create solutions for us or inspire more solutions for us as athletes is great, because people have used our influence for years to build their own companies and then to go back and give us, what they feel like is adequate. Now, us as athletes can have, in this generation, have the resources, the platforms, the information that we can create our own, and then we can give other athletes opportunities to do the same. Everybody thinks you're just dumb jocks that don't know, they just go out there and play, and then that's about it. I challenge that.
Was getting all this off the ground easier than you thought, more difficult, about what you thought? How would you describe it?
About in the middle. Obviously, it's a lot that goes into running a company and getting a company off the ground. I think it's more so getting it off the ground. I think it'll run a lot smoother as I establish some things. It didn't cost a crazy ordeal amount as of yet. And it's been fun. But as I'm going through it, I've been really hands-on in the journey, so I can be the one that can explain. I can easily hand it off to somebody to run and just not focus on it. But then,
How involved are you then, like in the day-to-day?
I'm pretty involved. All the approvals, I approve. I'm the sole investor, so I've invested. Nobody else has invested but me. As of now, at least. That will change in the future. When it's your money, obviously you're watching. You're watching and looking for everything.
You said last year, you were talking about kind of what happened over the summer with Nike. You said, it feels great to have support, and one day I'll share my story. Is this the day you care to share your story?
I'm sharing it now.
About the conflict with Nike?
Conflicts with the sneaker industry, conflicts with athletes being, viewed as dumb jocks.
So it's all in one?
It's combined. There's personal stories. I don't feel the need to share those about things that have transpired. Maybe one day, but I don't find that significant as of today. But just overall, if you want to get an understanding of the gist, it kind of buckles down to that. The industry is definitely cut back. It's funding and its resources towards athletes for whatever reason. The creativity has been a little bit dull. And, athletes' value isn't being reciprocated or respected in today's time, and it's shown in a bunch of people's, inner conversations and things and dialogues that they have. Obviously, a few athletes are getting the luxuries of having great deals, but you can list those few on both hands. As a conglomerate, especially in the NBA, that's not the case. So trying to create solutions or trying to create other ideas and show other athletes that you can take things into your own hand, create your own brands, create your own companies, etc., I think gives the power back to the athlete. And if you still want to go sign with Nike or Adidas, there's no problem with that. There's no issue with that, but the fact that those are the only options and they kind of dominate the market is a part of the frustration that has grown amongst, because these are the options that you have and they all kind of stick together and they all give you the same kind of deal and you have to accept it or not. Okay, if it doesn't work for you, then what? What do you do? So trying to show athletes that, you don't have to wait around if you don't want to. If these brands don't want to align with you for whatever reason, whether it's political whether it's like they just don't think you're marketable or they just don't find any interest in you. You know, you don't have to wait around. You got influence. You got people who, you know, are influenced by you. You can kind of do stuff on your own, and what that looks like, how much money it costs, how much time it takes, but mostly just the courage that it's a different era and that you can do it. It's pretty much the thought that I'm trying to push. And everything else around that is like fluff, but really to teach athletes to think for themselves.
Do you still believe that that perspective cost you a spot on USA Basketball?
For sure. One, I think sneaker industries, and I said this before, have way too much control over like the basketball foundation. Like, you know, in youth sports it's the same. You know, kids are having to worry about even playing with Nike or playing with this or playing with that, playing with on Adidas circuit or et cetera. And they should just be working on developing their basketball skills. I won't go too in depth about my full thoughts because obviously this article is about more than just the controversies. I'm sure this is about the positive aspects as well, but I know people love to highlight controversy. But overall, I definitely think the shoe industry has way too much control over the basketball industry in itself. And we should be focused more on development. Instead, we're focusing on more on shoe politics. And I think that is why the rest of the world has caught up. And if we don't do something about it, the next Olympics and the next, you know, global outings are going to look a lot different.
So let's speak about one of the positives. You're the VP of the Players Union. CJ McCollum is 33. Do you aspire to one day be the president of the Players Union?
Maybe. We'll see. That's something that the players vote on. It's not something I can just autonomize. The players have to see that as something that they will want to have. I think I have the credentials, or I will have the credentials in the future if I choose to run. But I'm also trying to get some of these things that I've already invested a lot of time into off the ground, which is 741, which is Boston Exchange, Happy, all these different vehicles that I'm a part of right now, that I'm putting a lot of effort and energy into. I want to see thrive a little bit more before I take on another role.
The Boston Exchange thing you announced right after signing your new deal, it's gone into the mix and active over the last few months. Why was that important to you?
Why was it important? I think for obvious reasons. The community is important to me, should be important to everybody, but I get it. For me, it was the largest deal in contract history. I knew it was going to be a large platform. So I thought, what better way than when signing this deal is to announce my investment in my community, which is just an extension of my family and my beliefs that I've already had. So just being able to put projects together to make sure things are going and resources are going to the right places is what I'm dedicated to really while I'm here, while I'm alive. But in that moment, you know, I just seen it fitting. Wealth disparity is something that is not talked about enough, how it was created through systemic inequality. And even though things are a lot different in today's time, some of the initial foundations of systemic inequality still exist and have still set people and marginalized people back. So to be able to find instances to still speak to that and then give those opportunities to those who weren't privileged to get inherited them is something that I spend my time, effort, and resources in.
I get what you say, it's obvious. At the same time, not every player has done something like that, especially coming off a contract. Was there something specific that motivated you, you know, over the last couple of years, just being around Boston, seeing things that you've seen?
You could say that, but I think to answer your question better, I think players just, you know, are, you know, kind of the culture around how players operate and manage. I think a lot of times we have people around us that are thinking for us. They just tell us to focus on basketball or whatever. And once again, you are, people of influence that come from your community. You are, you're educated. You have, a high responsibility, even though people tell you you should, not accept that responsibility. I believe you should. I don't think basketball just is about being a basketball star or player. Isn't just about the cars, the clothes, the money, or the attention. It's also about responsibility. But I feel like the people who are around our players, the agents, et cetera, just the overall media or narrative is that you should be more focused on these things. The influencers like pushing them, that's the most important thing. You get praised for doing those things, but you don't get praised. It's like you don't get nearly as much attention for doing what's right in your community. And that can sometimes, confuse the minds of our young athletes, because obviously we put them on a pedestal. But I think, they should be celebrated more for what they do in their community rather than them being on TMZ, or rather who they're dating, or rather what kind of car they got, or et cetera. I just think society is backwards.
Just a couple of basketball questions. You've accomplished a lot during this time. All-Star, All-NBA, NBA champion. At one point you said largest contract in NBA history. I'm reminded sometimes of the old Marvin Hagler line about it's tough to get up and do the road work when you're sleeping in silk sheets. What motivates you as an athlete now?
The next generation. I think that's my soul, or my biggest motivation is the next generation. Leaving behind the legacy that's better, that's more improved than it is now. So just having athletes think differently in the future, having athletes understand their value, having athletes encouraged to be able to create their own brands and to take their ownership back and see themselves as thinkers, CEOs, not just jocks that entertain people for a living, just to see themselves as a more evolved athlete, as a more evolved human being, a person of their community, et cetera, and takes the responsibility in that rather than just being told to just focus on basketball, or focus on sports, or focus on entertainment, and everything else, is whatever. No, you're the talented one. You have the God-given ability, You're the one that sets you're the one in control. So just to understand that and to think for themselves.
Just lastly, Jason was on the cover over the summer, and one of the things he said when we were talking was about over the years, you guys are obviously in a great place now, a lot of success as teammates. He said that he wishes he was more publicly supportive of you in the past. Do you agree with that? Did you feel that over the years when things weren't as good as they are now?
I don't know how to answer that, or I don't know what he meant, but I don't know.
I guess you've been through a lot in the city, from the very beginning, when they booed the draft pick itself on draft night because they wanted a deal. Every summer, you're in trade rumors. I guess maybe it's more the question of when you think back at these last 6 years or so, how challenging were they to you?
Very, very challenging. To be honest, things have not gone my way. I haven't been catered to in a sense, which has made me stronger. I think has made me a better player, has driven me. I can complain, but in reality, it made me the best. So I'm grateful for it, even if it was indirect. I know that wasn't intentional. I don't think the organization it was intentional, but it is what it is. It made me better. It made me better. I know it. There was a lot of people who didn't believe I would be to this position I am now. Some were in this building. Some are, no longer here, but I am. So I'm grateful is how I would describe it.
Sounds like you used every bit of that as fuel.
Yeah, and I still am. I still think I have ceilings to reach. I don't feel like I've reached my ceiling. I still feel like it is, things that I am still developing and I'm still working through with this organization. But, it's no problem, and this is what I want the youth to hear. There's nothing wrong with being a part of a team and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And winning a championship was one of my goals, and it brought me so much joy to be a part of that. So there's a difference between, I would just say that. I would just say there's no problem with being that. And I've made sacrifices. I've watched things happen. A lot of stuff has transpired in this organization, and I understood it. I didn't complain. And I didn't have an agent call and complain or the way some of these other guys do. I just let it make me better, and it fueled me, and it's still fueling me now. So this is just a beginning for me, and I'm so invested in learning. I'm so invested in getting better and improving. And it's fun to do. It's fun to do.
Appreciate it, Jaylen.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, man.
Yes, sir.